studies have shown that the amount of omega-3s, fatty fish, and omega-3 intake or supplementation in pregnancy increases or decreases the risk of ADHD and autism while baby's being developed. It's like one of the biggest factors as well, because if we think about those neural pathways, they get developed depending on how much omega-3s we have.
I was out on a hike at Curtis Falls. So
prior to treatment,
everyone avoid Curtis Falls out in Mount Tambourine as well. I need to go to the bathroom.
Yourself.
Yeah, I need to go to the bathroom, and I had no choice because there was a tourist bus of all the Chinese tourists had come through, and I ran past them. And
welcome back to Balance Beings Uncut, where we talk about health, wellness, and everything in between. Today we've got a very special guest speaker, which is Jesse Lomax. So we wanted to do a little potty with Jesse today because he has got a very specialised area that we think would help a lot of listeners. So take us through what you do, Jesse.
Well, thanks for having me on, firstly, guys. So I run it's called Just Jesse Support. So it's just an independent NDIS provider. We advocate and provide support for NDIS participants with psychosocial disabilities, an array of mental health issues, from children to adults. So we work with kids as young as 6 out to our oldest participant would be in their 50s. Yep. So community access, assistance with daily living, just navigating their way through the NDIS space. That's and also psychosocial recovery coaching as well. So mainly with adults for the most part there. So,
awesome. Yeah. So take us through what got you into this and the type of patients you kind of see.
Well, initially I started off going down the avenue of education, and really took an interest into behaviour support and working with kids with their behaviour. The curriculum side of things wasn't of an interest for me too much, and I found myself getting burnt out quite quickly. So once I heard about the NDIS and being able to tap into that space, it was something that I was just passionate. I haven't looked back ever since I've started. It's something that, it's a strong connection for me with my childhood and upbringing. It's with my, I also have ADHD as well. It's something that I want to be able to help with others and other families, not just with the kids or adults, but also families as well, the parents too. So
that's awesome. So what we're going to talk a little bit more in detail today is a bit more about ADHD and mental health and how that space really impacts our ability to heal if we're not using those spaces together. So essentially, like with naturopathy, a lot of times we'll have clients with a lot of trauma or past issues that they're dealing with, and their body's in a really bad fight or flight response, or their cortisol levels are really dysregulated. And if we're not really tapping into the core factors as to why that's happening, withania and rhodiola and romania, those amazing adaptogenic herbs are only going to do so much if we're not actually treating the core problem. So just like Balance Beings, we're all about testing and treating the root cause, but sometimes that root cause might actually be looking at your childhood and looking at all those other factors that's actually causing problems too. It might not be the testing as the solution, which is why we wanted to do this potty today.
And especially covering ADHD from child to adult. So I've seen quite a few men and women in the clinic that were medicated when they were younger, and then school finished and then they're off medication. So managing that through nutraceuticals, nutrition, mindfulness, and herbs to help support adult ADHD alongside childhood ADHD as well. And all about that generational trauma and how it impacts neurocognitive function. So
yes, and we also have Jesse here as a client. So he also works alongside Balance Beings for support and help, which is awesome. We love someone who works in all different modalities to heal, which I think is awesome. So why don't we break apart and do some more questioning with Jesse to see what's going on. Because I want to be able to talk openly and deeply, I think today was our goal.
Yeah.
So people can understand what healing looks like. So take us through a bit more about how you found out you were diagnosed with ADHD and like the coping mechanisms that you currently use that you find that are helpful.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed in Year 12, approximately about 2 weeks before my QCS exams.
Timing.
So really good timing. So it's ATAR now. So 2 weeks beforehand, for me and my family, the diagnosis kind of came from a place of, what's wrong with this child, what's wrong with me, and to be able to collectively find answers. Maybe it wasn't the best approach, but I took a lot from that. I guess being able to have a bit of a relief as well, knowing that some of my behaviors are happening because because of ADHD, because it's something that I haven't been able to. I wasn't necessarily nurtured, and the awareness and understanding what ADHD is, I wasn't able to make those connections. So, the diagnosis started from there, and the journey has been very interesting. Only probably in the last couple of years have I sort of honed in on getting a good grasp on ADHD and what it means for me, and how I do for my own work, but how can I tailor support for myself in the best way possible.
Yep. Awesome. And what would you say that your coping mechanisms are? Like, what do you find is the most useful and something that you would recommend for your clients or for people that do struggle with ADHD or AD a lot?
Yeah. I definitely think little things like having a clean environment.
Yep.
It translates to having a clean mind, essentially. I do suffer and struggle a lot when my environment's not clean. So my bedroom, my living space, my car, which is essentially my office as well. That really does translate to the type of work that I'm doing, my mood, how I'm operating day in, day out. Little things, having apps that I use, like I use Google Tasks, Google Calendar as well. Yeah. And those little things kind of help along the way, but they're sort of strategies that I can be in control with straight away. The other things as well is my diet. My diet's huge. For such a long time when I was growing, and that's only been in the past couple of years. I had a really bad run with my health, and I think that translates for both my physical health as well as my mental health. Growing up, I played a lot of basketball, semi-professional as well, and I was burning a lot of carbs, so I would just eat anything and everything. I could eat a whole packet of Tim Tams and there'd be no issue there. And now it's just something that I don't indulge in that sort of stuff anymore, because I know that it's not great for me physically as well as mentally. I really see the difference now that I'm in my mid-20s. I think my environment, having strategies that I can control with my apps, my organization skills, and then also the diet is quite huge as well. So
definitely. And I find that a lot of people with ADHD, they struggle with switching off and calming down, and even when their life isn't stressful, every day feels stressful for them. And that obviously makes a lot of symptoms worse when they feel like that go all the time. So I think another thing that Jesse's taught me a lot, which has helped with my clients as well, is things like journaling or acknowledging that, hey, my mind is never going to be empty, and then acknowledging that instead of fighting that actually helps you to feel more calm as well. So I feel like those are really, really helpful factors to also implement. So reading a book or taking specifically 3 mindful tasks into your daily habits. So like going for a walk or going to the gym can help you feel like you're getting out that energy. Sometimes you need to feel like you're getting out that energy, which helps with ADHD as well.
It's like 30 minutes of physical exercise in the morning and in the evening can just change so many different connections. And then also, like, you could do a walk or you could do some journaling, and then also accepting that your mind's never going to be like everyone else's. It's never going to feel fully still, which is something that helps when you accept as well. If we talk a bit more about some amazing nutrients and dietary changes that really, really help for ADHD, where would you what would be the key factors that you'd be thinking about, Madison? Sugar-free is a huge dietary change, and gluten-free, dairy-free, so anything that's going to cause inflammation. So when we're looking at things that can destroy our gut health, so there's a really strong connection between gut and brain health. So when we think of the term leaky gut, because of that mind-gut connection, then we're also looking at leaky brain, which sounds a lot worse than it is. But it's talking about the neurotransmitters, so those brain chemicals, serotonin, dopamine, that we need. They're the main neurotransmitters for ADHD. They are created in the gut, and serotonin is the precursor to melatonin. So when we see clients with ADHD, we then see their sleep suffer, their sleep onset suffer as well. So we need to make sure that the gut is functioning at its absolute optimum. So removing those inflammatory compounds. So glutens can be very inflammatory to the body. So pulling that out, pulling out dairy, checking in on testing. So like looking at a gut microbiome, checking on that secretory IgA and those zonulin markers to see how leaky the gut is. And then also sugars. So sugar is just creating that dopamine hit. And then you just feel like you need continual intake of sugar there as well. Nutrient-wise, looking at things like pre-serotonin is a really beautiful compound that I love to use, and magnesium. So
magnesium is needed for 300 biochemical reactions in the body. And so when we think about ADHD, the body is more fast-paced. It's using up everything more and quickly. So a lot of people with ADHD have that magnesium deficiency, so they have a higher requirement, especially because in Australia, soil is depleted from magnesium as well. So super important. If I was thinking about any go-to supplement for ADHD, I'd be thinking Medimag Calm or Medimag Cognition by MediHerb, which is amazing blends specifically for that. Or going and grabbing a good quality magnesium, like a magnesium biglycinate.
Yep.
Some other key herbs that we find life-changing results with people in the clinic with ADHD, even children, say from up to the age of from 2 onwards, is things like passion flower, saffron, ginkgo, and bacopa.
Yeah, so saffron, it's come out a lot more information lately that supplementing with saffron has had better outcomes than using stimulants like Ritalin to support those neurocognitive pathways as well. And it's a really beautiful antioxidant, really amazing herb. They're very calming for the nervous system. And yeah, children with ADHD just thrive on saffron as well. It's a really beautiful, gentle herbal support there.
Definitely. And I think that another important aspect to think when we think holistically with ADHD and mental health is how our parents view us growing up and how they treat us, as we can feel quite different as well when you've got ADHD growing up. I think that's a massive factor that will impact how you feel about yourself the rest of your life. Essentially, everyone that grows up, we are a reflection of how we were treated as children. And I think that working on some techniques and teaching you guys how you can support your child if they've got ADHD is really key as well, because a lot of times the children that are always naughty or it's always their fault, the family's falling apart, is typically the kids that have ADHD a lot of the time.
My son has ADHD. He was diagnosed when he was 6. And what I love about hearing like your story, Jessie, is I don't know how long ago that was, like 10 years ago?
Yeah, 10,
roughly.
10, 12, something like that.
10 years ago, it felt like there was a heaviness and almost negative connotation to having a diagnosis. It was kind of like, okay, he's got ADHD, he's the naughty kid. I love that there's been a big shift. And I sought out my son's diagnosis for support at school so that he wasn't tailored the naughty child. So it helped to support the understanding. He's in a small school. There's like 1.5 classes per grade. And he really thrives in that environment. But it just helped to support him, because then everyone knew pretty much, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad. But they gave him the tools to support him there, which is really beautiful. Because I remember growing up at school and going like, oh, they've got ADHD. And there was like a heaviness to it. Whereas, yeah, it's definitely flipped, I feel. Do you find that with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Even last week I went out to Mastery Schools in Southport. They have a few different campuses in Queensland and actually in other states as well, in Victoria and Tasmania. And their philosophy is, like the small classroom setups and really advocating for these kids and especially a lot of kids with ADHD go to these type of schools. I think it's massive. The change in the past couple of years, I actually really feel like since COVID, it's kind of changed a lot. I haven't been able to put my finger on it, but
it's probably the parents working it out at home and having to like,
and like with the need for the medication and the diagnosis, and I think that where the awareness is really changing a lot, and to be able to really advocate for these kids, we all have ways that we're all different learners, and we all have to be able to advocate for these kids, but also adapt to their learning needs. Like little things like even using timers throughout the school session or their class, being able to engage with them with it as visual learners as well. As they can visually see that, they can process that a lot easier, rather than being like, hey, we've got 5 minutes on this activity, we're doing this. I know for myself as a kid, I'd be like, I wouldn't even be there. I wouldn't even know or gauge what you're saying to me right now. But if I can visually see it, then I'm able to understand and apply myself a lot easier. So
we got Archie a Garmin. Oh God, I think it was in prep. It was probably way too early, but it was self-managed then, so we could set timers for him at this time to do that, and he just gave him that independence as well, because then he could go like, okay, I've done that, and he was earning coins for doing different tasks and stuff.
And there's that reward system.
So it was like getting that, and that worked really well for him, because I come from like deep connections of ADHD. So his dad had ADHD, and then my husband has ADHD, and Archie has ADHD. So I don't know, I feel like I probably have it as well. But I can see it and see how it looks as an adult, and then versus like how he is. And I've had to explain that to my husband. Archie would have naughty parent moment where he'd play Fortnite, and because that is just like major dopamine hit with no structure, no time. So when we'd be like, okay, switch it off, we've got dinner, he would just lose it because he'd lost that control. I had to explain to my husband, like, how would you feel if you were halfway through COD and I had to say, turn it off? So yeah, very much like that. Giving them that autonomy to control and then see what they have to do and turn it off for themselves just unlocks so much more, because you're giving them what they need to be able to get that pathway and then hopefully learn it as well.
The dopamine's huge. Like, I think it's massive.
It's dangerous.
I would say probably up until like the past like 3 years ago did I start realizing that most of my life day to day was just thriving off dopamine. Like doom scrolling on my phone, having high like hits of sugar, what else, like always spending time with people as well, not being able to settle down with my own thoughts, like getting excited by spending time with other people. Basketball was huge as well, which was great, a bit more healthier source of dopamine there, but real short-term stuff that wasn't providing substantial living for me. And like you get with that as you go from being in school and growing up, university or tertiary education, going through TAFE or going straight into the workplace, it can really take a hit. I feel you're not having a substantial amount of good hormones fluctuating through you, and things like doom scrolling as an example, like that really took a hit for me. My happiness, I was quite depressed for such a long time. But yeah, you mentioning the dopamine there is quite huge. It resonates a lot with me. So
how was it for you during COVID with like isolation and?
It was definitely an interesting time. I guess I did struggle a little bit. I mean, for me, I sort of engaged with my environment there. I mean, I was in the middle of my basketball season still. It still continued as that was happening.
That's cool.
Which was great. But I was kind of utilizing my environment a bit more, like going to the beach more and appreciating what was around me, which I think a lot of people are doing that now anyway. And that's why so many people moved to the Gold Coast and they appreciate the environment around us. But I struggled in some ways and didn't. I guess, being able to connect with people was a big struggle. FaceTime was being used a lot to talk to anyone and everyone. But being within my own self, my own thoughts, that was definitely something I struggled with a lot. And I didn't really necessarily care about my health too much back then as well. Not until I started, I got really sick in like 2022. And that's sort of like when everything sort of changed. But yeah, it was a mixed result, I guess you could call it.
There's always a crux moment. I noticed my son thrived during COVID because it was very structured at home. We did like homeschooling. He'd do a little bit of school and it was really good. But then, that connection really impacted him. And that's when it was kind of like, and it was so, I see a lot more children with anxiety now and like 8 to 10 span from when it was probably peaking during COVID for them as well, which is when they probably needed that most like connection and nurturing.
Yeah.
So it's very, very interesting.
Definitely. Another massive thing that we use in clinic is not only do we want to support, we also want to look into testing. But before we talk about that in a little bit more detail, what I wanted to ask is talking about a little bit more about the ADHD and GABA link. Like Jessie and I have some amazing results with GABA. Why would you say that is, Madison?
Because I tested it on my husband first. No, so GABA is the most inhibitory neurotransmitter, and when you're thinking of ADHD, it's how I explain it most of the time is based off of my son's bullying about his ADHD diagnosis. So one of his friends used to say like, oh, you've got a crazy brain. And I just explained it to him like, no, your brain's not crazy. It's just working 50 times faster than the average brain. So if you channel it and you use it, it's going to just unlock so much. But if you can't channel it, it's going to feel really scattered. So what GABA does is it just helps to slow things down enough so that you can align your thoughts and then really thrive in that sense. Would you say that's how it makes you feel?
Yeah.
Would you say that's how it makes you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like pre-workout.
The pre-workout,
hey.
yeah. It is used as my pre-workout. Yeah, it is.
And yeah, GABA, it's can be life-changing for some people. It can be really bad for some people as well, and it can create vivid dreams if it's dosed incorrectly, too late in the evening, or for the wrong person. So I attempted it the other day. Chronic headache once I had it. So I'm just like, GABA is a no for me. And I had this really bad reoccurring dream that every time I woke up, I was having it as well. And I had taken it around midday. So if it works for you, it works really well. So definitely don't supplement it by yourself. Work with a qualified prac and they'll be able to throw it in. I think I just threw it in yours, like just as a, this will help.
Yeah. No complaints here.
Because yeah, when we're looking at how gut is impacting ADHD, stress is one of the biggest depleting factors of our good beneficial bacteria within our gut. And we need that good beneficial bacteria to create those healthy neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. So when they are not firing on all cylinders and then we're feeling more stressed and more scattered through the ADHD brain, then that stress is going to deplete those good beneficial bacteria. Also things like eating inorganic foods that are sprayed with glyphosates, because our gut is not glyphosate resistant. That depletes all of our beneficial bacteria, worsens ADHD symptoms. Most of the kids that I see in clinic, it's just like small changes that you have to make to really diversify their gut microbiome, but they're usually having beige foods, no polyphenols, no very minimal fruits and vegetables. If it's a fruit or veggie, it's like an apple, so still doesn't have great polyphenols like blueberries or strawberries. And they're having sugar, they're having refined carbs, lots of packaged easy food with that sugar hit, and it's just depleting their gut microbiome. So it is an effort for parents to do it, but it is life-changing when you can stick with it. And it can be as simple as adding a bit of sauerkraut juice into the tomato sauce that they're having, switching that tomato sauce to like there's a really beautiful keto one that's got no sugar, so you can add a little bit of sauerkraut to that, and then you're getting those probiotic-rich nutrients within the sauce. And it's not enough for the child to taste it, but we're making those steps towards improving their gut microbiome health, which is improving their ADHD and neurocognition.
And I
as
think
well.
what's key to remember is we can go and do all this good bacteria work and put all the good bacteria back in, but we want to keep that good bacteria in there and nice and healthy, which is going to be stripped again if a child is then gets stressed. So we also need to be working on the actual ADHD symptoms and working on other environmental factors like how you're parenting to also support your child as best as possible, so that you're not going to causing them stress a lot of the time, which is going to strip all that good bacteria and the work that we've then done as well.
I do a lot of gentle parenting at home for Archie. I think being a parent's really cool because you can take different parts of different parents that you've seen and just like morph that into what you want to be. It's similar-ish to what my parents did. I don't think they were that gentle.
I think that it's also dependent on the type of child you have. Not every child needs to be treated and parented the same, and I think you need to really hone in on what works for them and what doesn't work, while also obviously having firm boundaries, because without boundaries for ADHD, that can also make it worse as well. So also having those boundaries in place so they know what to expect and when to expect it also really, really helps with kids with ADHD.
Lists, timers.
Timers.
They a big thing that I've noticed, like in my parenting, is that I try to avoid as much negative connotation as I can, because that just shuts the brain off. So we do as much like positive reinforcement as to just support, and then that positive reinforcement then creates him to want to do more and get that like more positive dopamine from getting like a reward hit that's not like money value or anything, just like you did a really good job at that, even if it was trash. Like wiping the bench most of the time is not good enough, but you did a really good job there, Arch. And like that compliment sandwich where you did it good here, I'll just touch up over here again, make sure that you get that next time, but it was an awesome effort. And then so he's got steps to improve next time, but in a positive manner. It seems to really work well for him.
And I think another thing to think about when we're doing firmer boundaries and we are having boundaries in place with our children, something to think about is, instead of saying, no, you can't have this. So, no, we're not having pasta tonight. Instead of saying that, say, tonight we're going to have pies because that's what we've got on the menu. But tomorrow night or next Thursday, we are going to have pasta. Because a lot of times when we've got ADHD, all we think is yes or no, and we feel like it's black and white. We can't deal with the fact that it's a no, because we've got that dopamine and we want it when we want it, and we can't kind of undo that feeling. But if you, instead of come across and say no straight away, they kind of got to set off and have a tantrum a lot of the times if they've got ADHD. So finding it's very helpful to kind of change the way you're talking to your child as well can make a massive difference.
Or husband.
Or husband.
Don't change any plans last minute.
How would you find your upbringing, and how do you feel like that impacted your ADHD, Jessie? What do you think that would be the biggest tips that you would give parents to do differently or not do?
Yeah, I think my upbringing was quite volatile for the most part. I think what you guys just spoke about a lot was all sort of like based on the fact of like nurturing. Nurturing was quite absent in my upbringing. It was very, like black and white. I don't know. I guess my upbringing was also based on feeling like an accessory growing up. And, you know, I guess my parents were a lot older, and maybe that's part of their generation. I've done a lot to be able to learn about their upbringing. But yeah, for the environment for a child that has ADHD, it didn't work well. And I think them being proactive to help me see a psychologist early on, since I was like 13, 14, was great. But I guess the objectives weren't, you know, there was no blend there. It wasn't aligning well. You know, it was more so for them rather than for me at the end of the day. How can their life be made easier, rather than how can we find strategies for our son to be able to thrive in this environment and, you know, secondary education and you know, pursuing his goals. So it was definitely a lot of you know, why are you doing this? Don't do that. Yes, no's. Rather than maybe we should try and stimulate this child through asking him questions like, what makes you think we should do that, or what makes you think that's a good idea, or like let's try and like put it back on the child in the sense of asking him open-ended questions to be able to discover the answer through himself, rather than no, yes, because we are all curious beings. We all try and, we're always experimenting every day as children, or even as adults. We need to find these answers within ourselves as well, rather than someone just saying, hey, this is right, that's wrong. We're always going to be like, well, why is that wrong? So I think for parents, and I've noticed it a lot of participants that I deal with, that nurturing side's not there. Being able to level with your child if they do have a diagnosis like ASD, ADHD, being able to get on their level of understanding and being able to achieve that through different levels of communication. You've got to experiment. So
definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really important role for your work as well, because like some parents can't meet those needs. Like I have seen parents and they just physically can't get there, and that's where you step in and like nurture the children through your support as well. I think that's really amazing.
Yeah, and the line that I always use with parents at the end of the day is, I'm not a parent. I'm not a father. I don't have children of my own, but I do have my own lived experience of what not to do, I guess, in some ways. And I use that. Lived experience is huge for people in my industry, and even for you guys as well. It is so essential. If you don't have that and you've just gone straight into education, some tertiary education to learn about this, yeah, that's great. But the lived experience really can separate you, get you on that next level. Which it's for me, the lived experience. I want to be a behaviour support practitioner, so that's my next step for next year, through tertiary education, and I think that being able to tie that in with my communication with parents is massive. So yeah, like I said, I'm not a parent. I only know what I know. But maybe we could try and do some adjustments here. You don't have to take it on board. If you want to do it, that's great. If not, that's fine. So that's kind of like my sort of approach.
Some other really important tactics that I find environmentally that help children as well is some type of different sensory input, which I've learnt with an OT before. And that's been really, really helpful for children I've seen in the clinic with ADHD. So some key examples is having a swing in the backyard or having that movement. Even noticing like how different they are in the car. Sometimes they need a secondary input as well, like which is something that Jessie actually recommended as an implementation for our clients in the clinic, but sensory toys. So like having some sensory toys and then that movement in the car can actually really help them to calm down. They're always quite excited, like you said, Jessie, to get out because that dopamine has hit once they've got to their destination. So taking a minute to actually relax and stay in the car, because they're less likely to go run across the road because the dopamine's hidden and they get hit by a car. So really important to be able to have those kind of steps. But sensory input's a massive one, like when you're talking to them, getting on the level and talking to them and touching them as well can be really helpful so they can actually listen, because a lot of times they're too busy in their mind thinking about something else that they're not going to listen to you, and then you're yelling and screaming at them thinking they're ignoring you, but they're really just thinking about something else because they don't have the sensory input that they need. So I think that's another key implementation you can do as a parent. And another one that's really important is, as a parent, reducing your stress as much as you can and reducing how busy your life is so you can actually implement these strategies, because a lot of times your children do need them. And at the end of the day, our lives are busier, and I get that. But in order to help your child the most, we do need to slow down, because us being go all the time and being in a rush to places is going to make the ADHD worse.
Rush breeds rush. So I had a really strong theory, and then I found GABA mate and then kind of like aligned that theory. So I had a very chaotic couple of years when Archie was born. So I was 17 when I found out I was pregnant. I had him at 18. His dad and I split by the time before he was 1. So I was a single mom, lived in the house by myself. We had a really weird arrangement back then where it was like Wednesday night from 5 p.m. to not even, I think he picked him up from daycare or something, until I had to pick him up at 4:30 Thursday morning before he started work, and it was just chaotic. Horrible. And then heaps better now. And then it was like every other weekend was like one day. So it ended up being 2 nights a fortnight. And as I started studying, I had this theory that children of split parents were more likely to have ADHD, based off of like that trauma of not having that sound nurturing home, and then being split and having to go here and there and not getting that like safe neurocognition and connectedness by having that. So and then I actually had really poor sleep, and I'm like, well, I'm dropping him off and picking him up really early, and that started like his melatonin cascade just going completely out of whack, and just being really scattered within myself, because I was like, what are we doing? I've got to go to work, got to do this, and just being really, really rushed. And it wasn't until I took a step back and was like, what am I doing, that I really noticed that his ADHD slows down. And it was all about that rush. Like, okay, we're here, we've got to go here for breakfast. I picked you up, we've got to go here, we've got to do groceries, I've got to go to work, I've got to get you ready. Come on, eat your breakfast quickly. Like, he does not thrive in that environment at all. It's got to be, okay, so we're going to do 30 minutes for brekkie, so he's not rushed. And I tell him now, and we work through lists and all that, and we don't change things last minute, and I don't rush him to just try and calm everything down.
Yep. Which makes a world of a difference, for sure. So we talk a little bit more about testing for ADHD. Our goal is to minimise symptoms as much as possible, and we do that through healthy production of neurotransmitters which help balance out that excess dopamine. So it's how we achieve that. And we've obviously talked about gut microbiome in a little bit more detail because of the leaky gut or intestinal permeability, which looks like on a gut microbiome test secretory IgA and zonulin. So that's what the markers that we're actually looking at. And we're looking at that good bacteria level, which then is depleted if there's any parasites or worms or viruses or candida. So if you have those in there, you can't actually produce that good bacteria because the stomach is essentially full with all of those other viruses that are inside. So you need to then kill off all of those before you put the good bacteria in. So we've got that gut microbiome testing, which is probably our key testing that we would use for ADHD, but there's also some other important testing that we absolutely love as well. The other one is hand mineral testing because we can actually find heavy metals. So heavy metals can be, again, in pesticides, they can be in sprays, in non-organic produce, but then also in our water. So a lot of houses have copper piping. Copper in excess impacts our ability to use zinc. Zinc's the key nutrient used for neurotransmitter synthesis.
Yeah, food fussiness.
If your kid's really fussy with food or they feel like they don't have much taste buds, that can be altered by zinc. So hand mineral testing is awesome because we can look at the nutrient levels and the heavy metals. Then the third test that we would consider would be MTHFR buccal swab testing because our methylation impacts...
Is that the motherfucker?
Yeah.
Gene? Yeah. So methylation...
Can you say that on the podcast?
Okay,
you
now.
said it?
Yeah, you guys did. I've been
did.
paying attention.
I'll allow it. Yeah.
So the MTHFR testing is also really important with ADHD. If you want to explain the links, Madison's our go-to MTHFR. We've got a whole podcast on MTHFR as well. If you wanted to tune in on that, it's on our BB Uncut, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But we'll briefly go over it today, and then we'll go into a bit more testing of a real-life ADHD case, Jesse, and what we actually did for him and what has and hasn't worked.
Yes.
MTHFR, Madison.
So quite a substantial amount of clients that I see with ADHD have tested positive for MTHFR as well. Also lots of theories around that. I've seen quite a few mums taking Elevate or prenatals that contain synthetic folic acid during pregnancy, myself included in my first pregnancy, and that depletes your methylation cycle. It's not going to improve it in any way. We're also not eating as many organs.
So methylation is so important because that also impacts our neurotransmitter synthesis as well, by the way. That's how it links with ADHD.
Yes.
Sorry.
And we're seeing an increased rise of neurodivergence as we've stopped eating the whole animal. So B12, very important for methylation. It's one of the most underlooked, most needed nutrients for methylation. And now that we're not eating liver as much, which is high in copper, so it's a balance, and those organ meats...
If you're going to eat any organ meats, eat spleen, because spleen is lower in copper but higher in B12, and high copper can cause worse than ADHD symptoms by impacting that zinc.
Yeah. So we need to be having good intake of B12 to be supporting that methylation cycle. When that methylation cycle is well supported, that's your detoxification pathways. That's how well are we clearing bacteria, heavy metals, mold as well. Mold, side note, huge link with ADHD also. And then we're impacting through, oh my gosh, I need my chart. I need to see my chart of the neurotransmitters. It then impacts our serotonin and dopamine through your methylation cycle as well. So B12, folate in moderation if you need it. So testing and not guessing. Most of the time when children are coming in with ADHD support, it's usually around the 4 mark. Would you say that? It's like you see most kids around 4 to 5.
With ADHD?
Yeah, that's when the parents are coming in.
Yeah.
They're old enough for a blood
normally.
test. I'd be doing a blood test to be checking in on those
B12.
nutritional stores. B12, folate, vitamin D, making sure that we're supporting that methylation cycle effectively. Knowing the exact SNPs of methylation and even doing a genetic test to know MMRR as well. So like MTHFR is kind of the celebrity gene.
Everyone wants to know how much testing is too, so maybe we should be transparent. So a gut microbiome test is about $400 or $415, I think.
$415 with return postage.
And then there's MTHFR buccal swab, so this MTHFR testing on its own is about $90.
Yeah.
If you're doing a genetic test, I think it's about $300.
Yeah.
And then we've got
171 for the hair
hair
tissue
test
mineral
with
level
nutrients
1.
and heavy metals. Yeah. Just so you guys know, because everyone's always like, oh
Yeah.
my god.
And that shows heavy metals really important. So that's showing us aluminium, lead, copper, cadmium, mercury. Lots of children I see high aluminium, high lead with neurodivergence. And that can be through food exposure, but also lifestyle exposure. So looking in our initial consultations, we do a really big deep dive into those exposures as well. So Archie's dad was an aluminium welder. So it's like a huge link that a lot of pracs overlook as well, is that you can clear all of that if you think it's just from food, but if there is a lifestyle exposure in there as well, obviously you can't change careers, but is there ways to like wash the clothes separately, make sure that they shower before touching the child, working through that as well to minimize those lifestyle exposures.
Yeah, definitely.
Doing a heavy metal clearance before actively trying to conceive as well for mum and dad, because that will
reduce the risk of ADHD.
And it'll translate down because they get passed down intergenerationally until they're detoxified and chelated out.
Yes.
Especially mercury. Mercury's really a big one, and that can be like a grandparent that's broken a mercury thermometer, and it's like, and you don't know that.
Yep.
I don't know what my grandparents have done.
To think about is also our gut microbiome is transferred through the placenta, so that good bacteria that's going to impact ADHD risk is going to get transferred to your child. And thirdly, studies have shown that the amount of omega-3s, fatty fish, and omega-3 intake or supplementation in pregnancy increases or decreases the risk of ADHD and autism while baby's being developed. It's like one of the biggest factors as well, because if we think about those neural pathways, they get developed depending on how much omega-3s we have.
And choline.
Choline as well, yeah.
And that goes for men's health also. So new studies that came out, I think it was the start of this year, that the baby's gut microbiome will depend on the male's gut microbiome huge, because it just doesn't make sense to me how that even works.
It's crazy how much gets transferred.
But yeah, so it's...
We are a replication of our parents a lot of the times with our health anyway, what we get from our parents. So with a lot of people, everyone always wants to do a lot of testing straight away, but what we've got to remember is we can't work on everything at once. We'd have to be giving you 10 prescriptions. So a lot of people want to get like an MTHFR swab and a hair test and a gut microbiome. The reason we don't like doing everything at once in the clinic is because we can't work on everything. So if someone's got gut microbiome issues and they've got intestinal permeability or leaky gut, they can't absorb out their nutrients properly. So we'll go and do a hair test and they'll be deficient in zinc, but we can't even work on that right now because we haven't treated the absorption issue in the stomach. So it's also good, or always good, to start with one test that you can actually work on, because if we do the 2 testings, we can't even help the zinc deficiency at that time that's impacting your ADHD as well, because we haven't fixed the absorption problem in the stomach.
So Jesse's results, we've got low secretory IgA with that really high zonulin. So
by the way, he gave permission before
Yes.
doing the podcast that he's
we didn't coerce.
You don't seem very happy right now.
If I didn't before, I have now.
You don't seem very happy
No, it's
about
fine.
it.
We'll talk about it later.
So we've got low secretory IgA and about over double the zonulin marker, so we don't want to see it any higher. In this reference range, it's 107. I don't like it any higher than 50, really, because that's when we're seeing progression towards leaky gut.
That's
What's
one
Jesse's?
of the highest zonulin I've ever seen.
Yeah,
220.
No,
so that's like really bad leaky gut, leaky brain. So no wonder why he's feeling like ADHD like. So the biggest things you want to see with a gut test to know that your kid's ADHD isn't being worsened by their gut is we want to see nice healthy zonulin, nice healthy secretory IgA, nice healthy good bacteria, and no parasites and worms, bacteria, viruses, fungi, and yeast.
Have you seen the bacteria?
Yes. So Jesse has got no bifidobacterium, good bacteria. He's got no good lactobacillus species at all. So there are key different types of good bacteria in the stomach, different bifido and lactobacillus species. He doesn't have any of that in there, which means he doesn't have the ability to produce healthy neurotransmitters to combat the dopamine that he's getting that's impacting the ADHD. So until we work on this, then we're only going to be able to do so much environmentally wise, right? We're still going to feel crappy every day because we're not producing anything to combat the dopamine. The reason we've got low good bacteria in here is because I feel like I've just taken over. I'm sorry, do you want to do this?
No, you can. There's a mold picture as well.
Okay.
Because
So
you got low oxalobacter.
yes, which we'll talk about in a second. We've got high levels of bad bacteria in the stomach, so Enterococcus, Citrobacter, Klebsiella. These also release an LPS, liposaccharides, which then can worsen ADHD as well. So
Highly
keeping that,
inflammatory.
because they're highly
Probably
inflammatory.
driving your leaky gut.
Yeah.
So counterproductive
Damn.
there. So we want to kill that bacteria. Oh my god, he needs to wait at least 6 months of test.
Oh no, it's been 7 months, but he's been inconsistent.
His Klebsiella is at
I'm
340.
good now, Chris.
His Klebsiella is at 340.
Yeah, I know. I've got work to do.
So
But how are you feeling now, though? You're feeling good.
Yeah, like phenomenal changes. I
But
think.
you can't stop now.
No.
This is like,
No,
what
it's been
kind of
consistent.
changes have you noticed through doing the gut work?
Well, I mean, we may as well get it out there. The stool. To start off with that, has been a lot more consistent and looking
you're
healthier.
welcome.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell them the bush story?
Oh, we're not getting into that.
What?
bush story?
What bush story?
Oh, yeah.
The hike?
No, we can talk about that. If you wanted to be on here.
Yeah, go for it.
Uh,
Really got to show you some changes.
I need to change some details, or otherwise, work might get in the way there. But yeah, I was out on a hike, at Curtis Falls. So
Prior to treatment.
prior to treatment, everyone avoid Curtis Falls out in Mount Tambourine as well. And I was out there, and I don't know if I had coffee beforehand, but had done half the walk and everything was great, and all of a sudden I needed to go to the
Shut
bathroom.
yourself.
Yeah, I needed to go to the bathroom, and I had no choice because there was a tourist bus of all the Chinese tourists that had come through, and I ran past them and was probably about 100 meters away from the toilet, and I didn't make it, so I had to. The nature was right there, the bush was right there, and had to go. So yeah.
And that's not normal, guys. That's called urgency. It normally means you've got bad bacteria in your stomach, like Jessie does.
Yeah, pass the flying colours.
So, tell us how your bowel movements are now and how urgency is.
Oh yeah, there's no urgency at all.
So if you went back to Curtis Falls, you could probably
Yeah,
get
it would
there,
be
yeah.
fine. Yeah, there'd be no
They'll let you back in
There'd
now.
be no tourists that'd be victims of me trying to push past them at all. It's been more consistent. Moving on from the stool, I guess my brain fog has definitely cleared up a lot. I feel like I can think a lot more clearly throughout the day, and I'm not actually as reliant on other strategies to be able to remember things.
Perfect.
My memory, both long and short term. Long term is definitely have troubles with that, but short term I had issues. It's gotten a lot better as well. I feel like I remember things throughout my week a lot better. I probably wouldn't even be able to remember what I did 3 days ago clearly, and now I know quite well. So which is very important. But that's something I've definitely noticed as well. Just
Awesome.
those two things.
And Jessie hasn't finished treatment yet, and we still want to do methylation testing as well after this. The reason being is because if you're prac, when we look at a gut microbiome test, we have a marker called beta-glucuronidase. So beta-glucuronidase is a pathway for detoxification and clearance. So if that's really, really high, then that indicates that the patient isn't detoxifying properly. And again, when we think about methylation is a detoxification pathway. So it signals that it could possibly be MTHFR, and beta-glucuronidase, we like to sit at about 4,000, and Jessie's at 6,300.
So beta-gluc's coming through your body's detoxifications. Phase 1, we're boxing up heavy metals, LPS, all the bad stuff. Beta-gluc's coming through to that nice, neat little box package to pass through to phase 2 liver detox. It's coming in and unboxing that. So we've got worsened recirculation of toxins. Probably worsen effects by caffeine as well. So whereas now we're probably halfway through beta-gluc.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk a little bit more freely, like we have been, but we're going to talk a bit more about diet, books, and some things that can help. So diet-wise, there's so many different factors, but keeping it back to basics. So stripping out the flavors and colorers would be the biggest thing, I would say, first step. Like if your kid's snacking, okay, don't worry about just reducing the snacking right now, but just swap it all out to make it color and flavor free. Then when you can, swap the snacks to real foods. So my kids will have like rice cakes as a snack, or they'll have a banana, or they'll have fruit, A big thing to think about with the fruits is adding nuts in there to help with blood sugar stabilization. The more blood sugar stabilization you have for your child, the more it's going to help with their ADHD and moods as well. So when we think about breakfast, instead of cereal, swapping it to some berries in porridge would be really helpful as well.
And the marketers are really good at getting ADHD kids to want cereal. Because if you walk through the cereal aisle,
So
you'll
bright.
see that all the bright kid ones are from like halfway up down, whereas all the healthy ones are higher up where they can't reach, and they've all got like Spider-Man or birds or all of those really drawing in colours. So what we do is we try to empty everything into like containers at home, but then I'll let my kids put their stickers on it so that they're like enticed into wanting
a good
those
idea.
ones. So it's like little tips and tricks.
It's also important that if you feel like that your kids impact, they're wanting to pick their own foods, then avoiding Woolworths and go to somewhere like Flannery's. So they're picking their own foods, but they've got those healthier options. Or don't bring them to the shops with you, picking out some options for them to take home if you're happy to have the other option. So you're giving them two healthy options. I feel like people with ADHD always want to make their own decisions. So feeling like they're in control of the decision to eat healthy is key with kids with ADHD. So giving them the options that are really healthy, I think, is really helpful too.
And options in moderation. So pick out a 3 instead of pick whatever you want.
Yes.
Because
I
you
always
will
give
be
them two
there
options.
for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
My son's like toxic trait would be going to iPlay or something and being like, okay, you've got 200 tickets. Pick something.
Oh, God.
We are
Yeah.
there for 2 hours. It is hell.
So I think that the key things is always blood sugar stabilization for kids with ADHD and adults. So what I mean by that is avoiding things that are going to give you a quick hit, sugar, with the things you want more, because that's going to drive dopamine and drive that mood dysregulation and worsen brain symptoms with ADHD.
How's your sugar cravings now?
Don't have any.
Yeah.
So sugar cravings can be driven by bad bacteria in the stomach because
And
they
candida,
crave
which
them.
Jessie had as well.
Yes, they crave that because that's how they essentially grow and thrive, through that sugar. So you're feeding that bad bacteria. That bad bacteria is reducing your neurotransmitters, which is making your ADHD worse. So it's like this massive cycle. So yeah, meat, eggs. A lot of kids that have ADHD don't want them because they've already got patterns of less healthy foods in their life. So I think changing things slowly can be really helpful. So I find a lot of kids will have like a juice that we can sneak some protein powder into, or having a smoothie in the morning with some protein powder can really help with blood sugar stabilization. Eggs and meat where you can, even if you're hiding them in foods. Like sometimes a lot of kids with ASD and ADHD will happily have rice. So sneaking in some eggs and bone broth into that rice can be really helpful as well.
And like, don't stop with the foods. Make it enticing. Cool straws, cool little shape cutters. Make it so that they're getting a fun dopamine hit on the foods that they're eating that are healthy as well. Because like, who doesn't love mini things?
100%.
Like, we've got really cool cutters. Archie's lunchbox, we used to have these like little fruit kebab things, and we put it on, and yeah, we did heaps of fun stuff to entice them into the healthier foods and modeling it.
And I think another thing for parents is a lot of parents feel like, oh, my kid's so fungal and I just can't be bothered, like it's going to take too much to undo. Don't do everything at once, because that's unrealistic for anybody to change things overnight. Even as adults, if we go and just do it whole, it's really likely we're going to fall back into old patterns. So just slow changes over time is key. Don't be so hard on yourself as a parent or as an adult that's trying to fight food patterns. Just do it slowly. So I would say week 1 would be swapping everything from colours and flavours to non-colours and flavours. Week 2 would be changing one snack from less whole foods to more whole foods, so going to fruit and nuts. And then week 3 would be starting to add changes into their actual meals.
So Archie used to gag over putting a vegetable in his mouth.
So how did you get over that?
There was a few tears. Had a couple of mental breakdowns after like every dinner. Did sneak stuff, but then I tried to not sneak stuff, because then you're kind of breaking that trust bond. We did safe food, so if Archie had a safe food, everybody had that safe food on their plates, so that they knew it was acceptable to have that. But then everybody had to take something. I stopped dishing up. Do lots of like pro eating stuff at home, so they dish out what they feel like they want to eat, so that they've got a good connection to what they want to eat and their hunger serves. Everybody takes a little bit of everything, and even if you don't eat it all, you have to try it. So it can take up to like 40 exposures for your child to then change their taste buds. So like I actually eat capsicum now, which gosh, even 2 years ago he wouldn't have touched.
Awesome.
And managing his zinc levels as well was huge. His entire taste perception changed once we leveled those out and got on top of that as well.
Awesome, that's so good. Yeah, I find that food fasting is the biggest thing. Zinc, a lot of times the high copper causing it. If you just do zinc supplementation, a lot of times it's not going to be enough to help, because a lot of times you've got to remove the copper. They fight for the same absorption site, so you've got to remove the copper before the zinc will actually start absorbing, and checking in on that through a hair test. Did you guys want to talk a bit more about any books that you guys have found that have really helped you at all?
Those are probably potties.
Yeah. Well, if we were talking about Gabor Mate, what is this relation to what though? In relation to...
It's in relation to things
Have
that
you
have
read that
helped you
one yet?
heal, things that have helped
Yeah.
ADHD.
Oh, yeah. I actually listened to the Joe Rogan podcast with Gabor Mate, and
Can I have a little look?
I find it quite
That one's
interesting
amazing.
about him. He's great. The more fascinating thing about him is he also has ADHD, and I love the way that he communicates throughout the podcast, where he loses his train of thought. Like he actually like demonstrates, the signs of ADHD, and he's no shame at all from him in any way for it. Like he's not apologetic for it.
No.
I think it's great that he also has lived experience as well. But yeah, and he does over intellectualize a lot of things, but it's so fascinating that how that was a 2.5 hour podcast. I thought it was great. Yeah, I haven't gotten into his books yet as such, but yeah, that will probably be the next for me.
That one, Scattered Minds, so it's the origins and healing of attention deficit disorder. So all about generational impact on, so that's what I was saying, like with being from a split family, generational impact there. So he was actually born, oh gosh, if I've gotten this wrong, I apologize, but he was born during the Holocaust. So like lots of hiding, lots of changing, lots of instability there as well, and that kind of fostered his ADHD development and worsened symptoms. And then he became a parent, and that was when he really noticed his ADHD amplified, because you lose control. Absolutely fantastic. It's on Audible, and I think it's on Spotify Premium as well, because I buy the books, as my friend called them, shelf trophies the other day, because I listen to audiobooks and then need the actual book. Otherwise I'm like driving, I have to pull over and then write notes once I hear things, but absolutely fabulous. In his other book, The Myth of Normal, Illness, Health and Healing in a Toxic Culture, really good. And because trauma is a huge thing that I love. It didn't start with you, so how inherited family trauma shapes who you are and how to end the cycle. So it's sometimes things don't start with you, and it can be like great-grandmother accidentally started a fire that killed her newborn infant, and then grandmother's sister had mental illness. Grandmother won't talk about her family. Mother had postpartum depression, and then the child's got feelings of I'll go crazy since the age of 18. So how that goes down and passes down through generations as well. Fabulous. To try and, it's really bad, but unpack the blame from yourself and push the blame further up the tree. But yeah, they are all fabulous. Heaps of podcasts with, oh my gosh, mental blank, Gabba as well. He's fabulous. I love everything that he does. So good.
And another thing to remember is the most successful people are generally those with ASD or ADHD as well. So remembering that the brain is so powerful, and it's not a negative thing to have these types of diagnoses. It just means that you have to work through that and use different types of coping mechanisms that, some other people might not need to use. But it's not a negative thing. It honestly means that sometimes there's a more likelihood that you're going to be more successful than the average.
It's
as well.
One word that I term with ADHD a lot's endurance, because you got to put through the ringer with school, any kind of extra studies in any sense, just doing everything can come across so much harder. And once you find your way,
Yep.
and I look at that between like my husband and I, we are polar opposites with everything. I can just make notes and we'll do a podcast on it. And last night he was like, how do you do that? Like I would have to memorize everything. So he has to feel very, very confident in everything that he does to do it. And then that's him like ticking it off. And he had to do things in a very different manner in high school to be able to get to that same outcome as everybody else. And he was just in awe when I used to study because he's like, how can you do that? And his pressure response is a lot different to mine as well. So I work really well off of poor time management pressure. So like that, I need to get it done at this time because I've got the pressure to do it because it's due at 12 o'clock. I'll start it at 8 o'clock that night. Whereas his pressure response is, I need to have this done as soon as I can in case I fuck it up and have to redo it 6 times, which he normally would as well.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of anxiety in there as well.
Yeah, it sounds like anxiety a lot.
There's a good TED talk about that. This guy talked with the panic monster. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but
No.
yeah, it's pretty much saying the analogy is what you've just described there, leaving it to the last minute but being able to thrive off that pressure. He had a thesis that he left at the last minute, which a thesis takes over a year or two, and he left it to the last week, and yeah, he really thrived in that.
My entire uni was
Yeah.
the things due that night. Yeah. It was very, very toxic.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got there.
Yeah, for sure. With your diet, Jessie, is there any direct notices that you found with symptoms like sugar, gluten, dairy, or anything? What have been the biggest noticeable differences you've had with someone with ADHD?
Yeah, with sugar, in the morning feeling very groggy, lethargic, and also affecting my vision as well in the morning. Probably I've only come to recent discovery about this over the past couple of months that, yeah, probably if those lifesaver lollies, which the grape ones I've tried,
They're good.
unreal.
The peach ones. Have you had the peach ones?
Yeah, but they're also terrible. So,
yeah.
they I'd eat a whole packet the night before, and then probably until midday the next day, my vision would be quite blurry.
Most sugar, haven't you?
Yeah, like almost like completely. Yeah, like I don't have any cravings at all, and it's easier if I do, if I was to, have a little bit of sugar here, it would sort of like pile on top of each other, and then I'll have more and more, and my house is surrounded. My housemate, he has all these Hershey's Kisses lying around everywhere in these bowls. I don't touch them. I don't look at them. So yeah, I'm tested.
Little temptations.
I'm constantly tested. So
That's good. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And that's something that's missed a lot with parents with their kids with snacks because, once again, marketing on the boxes, free from refined sugars, no added sugar, all of this. Like it's all on the front of the box. Flip it around, read it. I went to a coffee shop the other day and asked for a matcha. And they were like, oh, we've only got this one. And I had a look at the back and it was like glucose, high fructose corn syrup, sugar, and then coconut sugar. I'm like, the first 4 ingredients are sugar? No. Like, it's supposed to be green tea. So yeah, have a look. There's heaps of different names for different sugars as well. And even those foods that are healthy can be just jam-packed with sugar as well.
So remembering that natural sugars are still going to drive ADHD symptoms, but back to basics to begin with. Just cut the flavours and colours and then work on sugars and then work on refined sugars, but don't try and be too hard on yourself as well.
And there's good colours as well that you can get. Lots of health food shops sell them if you're doing a birthday cake.
Beetroot powder.
Beetroot powder. I do turmeric powder a little bit if I need anything to go like orange or yellow.
Blue spirulina for blue.
Yeah. Blueberry powder for purple. There's heaps of different ways. Regular spirulina for like a greeny blue.
Yeah.
But yeah, also support for parents. This Goblin Tools, it's fabulous to help support your child. So you can pop in, get a new item, because for me to go, okay, Arch, can you unpack the dishwasher? To me, that feels like an easy task that's achievable, but there is actually so many steps to that if it's not explained, he'll miss them because he's just trying to get to the fastest outcome. It's like, are they still wet? You're going to have to dry them. You're going to have to put them away. You're going to have to organize them. So that's just like a very mundane task. But you can type in empty the dishwasher.
What's it called again?
Goblin Tools.
Okay, so it's online.
It's online, so I can do empty the dishwasher as a task. So I can do it very basic and he can tick it off, or it goes spiciness level, which I love. How much breaking down do you need? And it's got like 1 chili to 5 chilies. So I'm like, okay, let's up this to 5 chilies and let's do it. Come on, little data, let's go.
Does it do it for you?
Yeah, so it's like identify the location of the dishwasher in the kitchen, approach the dishwasher. So it's got really amazing ways of breaking it down.
You write in the Goblin tools, empty the dishwasher, and it'll actually break down what your child needs to do so they can understand. Like,
yeah, and it's like if you need it to be very step by step for them to follow and tick it off, give them time as well. Give them time. So don't expect the dishwasher to be emptied in 2 minutes, especially with that, but it helps them to break it down. So you can even do a couple of tasks like get ready for the day, get dressed, brush your teeth. Well, there could be a few different things. Find a shirt and pants that match, or find something temperature appropriate, and it'll break it down, and it's fabulous because then they can tick it through. Heaps of cool apps to support as well. I think there's a Pokemon face timer as well. I know this is all like blue screens and involving screens, but sometimes you've got to use them to help support it. But this Pokemon FaceTime, you pop it up and it helps kids to like brush their teeth, because that's such a mundane, boring task for kids. And if you looked in my children's bathroom, you'd see about 12 different flavors of toothpaste to try and spice it up.
Another thing to keep in mind while it's on my brain is
It's gone.
There it is. If you can't get it back in 10 seconds, you have to forget about it. Because it's more damaging to your brain.
That's also for parents as well
TV.
as...
For parents, yeah.
Oh, here we go. She's back now.
She's back.
So another thing to keep in mind is the kids get a lot of dopamine from TV. As well on TV shows, so keeping in mind to minimize that where you can, and especially like in the morning to during the day, keep it to the afternoon when you feel like you really need it as a parent, and getting them outside to movement really helps with kids. So go buy a play set or go have a trampoline, and they might not want to play on it, but make it fun and interactive. Like, let's go kick the ball on the trampoline and see how many times we can kick the side of the wall of the trampoline mesh, because that can be really helpful. You can do obstacle courses, but trying to get them outside as much as possible and in nature will help the ADHD symptoms more than you can believe. And setting them up in the morning with TV is just like a dopamine hit straight away, and it's going to set them up to be worse through the day as well.
A good communication strategy with that as well is, so like you said, you know, if you have an activity outside, like encourage them to do that, which can kind of be hard as well if they're already in front of a screen or whatnot. But rather than being like, hey, we're doing this, or if the child wants to be involved with you, you can also communicate in a way where, I don't usually hang out with people that are in front of a screen watching TV. It's just not what I do. I'm more like an outdoor person, and then making that child feel like, oh, they're missing out on something. They're missing out on that experience or something that's outside that, you know, mum or dad want me to go outside because it's something that they do, and we want to bond and do something together. Because sometimes that they do want to watch TV, but they want to do it with their mum or dad.
Yeah.
So that's something else I try and tell parents. You know.
That's the good way of looking at it, for sure. And like making sure that you're replacing it with something fun. Like, to start with, if you're reducing screen time, you might need to do some more interactive games. Like, we have Jenga here, we have blocks, we have a kids sequence, which they absolutely love, and so we do a game every night after dinner instead of watching show before bed. So just those little changes can make a world of a difference for the kids as well.
And children with ADHD, they're so beautiful. Like, they are, and adults, they're the risk takers in life, and that's why most of them are successful, because they're the ones taking the most risks. So our backyard set up risk safe.
Me, on the other hand, getting the kids dirt bikes for Christmas.
But it's like in a safe space that they can go out and they can do what they want to do and get that kinetic energy release. And I know that they're safe, and I'm out there and we're doing things and we're active. We'll have like family soccer days and being really positive about it and getting outside. So we go on a hike most weekends, getting them out, doing that, so that they're modeling it and they're seeing parents doing it. So this is something good to do. And really going like, oh, we're going to do this. It works really well for my son, works horrible for my daughter if you prep them for it. So oh, we're going to do this like next week. It would be so toxic for Emmylou. She'd ask me like 50 times when we're doing it. But for Archie, he's like, oh, that's something to like strive towards. We'll do that. But yeah, getting them out, doing all that safe risk will be so beneficial for that ADHD.
Another thing, which I find a lot of parents already do, but instead of just like, and what you said with your child as well, is instead of just turning the TV off if you've got screen time, okay, 5 more minutes, okay, 1 more minute, okay, it's going off now. You need to give them preparation. You can't just stop something all of a sudden.
We have Googles everywhere.
Yeah.
So I just say set a timer on Google, and then when Google goes off, because my children respond a lot better to Google telling them to get off than me. And it takes me away from being the bad guy, like cutting them out of.
Yeah.
So I can be like, okay, cool,
Get your
dinner.
own phone and get them to put the timer on themselves.
Yeah, I do that with kids, especially for cleaning their teeth, or the sand timer.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, especially kids with ASD or like their IDs or intellectual disabilities, reading numbers can be difficult, but seeing the sand go down, the visual,
definitely can be helpful.
And songs, so it's like brush your teeth until the song finishes. Starting the day with music, so we always have music going in the morning, so you get like that.
What song are we playing?
When?
No, what kind of song would you play?
Just everything. Archie's really into the Black Keys at the moment, so this morning he had Gold on the Ceiling.
Don't know what that is.
Was, oh my god. Yeah, so we go through, and he's got he's really funny. He was listening to that It Wasn't Me by Shaggy. I think it was like an early 2000s. Never been more
great.
proud.
No,
but I'm like, do you know what you're listening to?
All right, awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Jessie. Is there anything else anyone would like to add before we wrap up our podcast with real life experiences?
No.
I feel like we've got everything out. We killed it. Thanks for joining us on this week's Unhinged Health Journey. Until next time, may your health be natural and your days be balanced.